Ghosts in the machine. The room was steeped in murk, the desk lamp a lonely beacon against the encroaching gloom. Anna Volkov tweaked the webcam, its dark orb reflecting a predatory gleam. Outside, Seattle's downpour lashed the glass, a relentless tattoo echoing the frantic pulse in her throat. Tonight, there was no going back. She surveyed the monitor, the austere interface of the encrypted stream. 3 watchers. For now. The link had been scattered across shadowy online haunts, whispered to contacts she wouldn't trust with a paperclip. A desperate move, born of desperation itself. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, initiating the broadcast. The green light winked to life. They preach that truth liberates, she began, her voice a controlled, even cadence. But sometimes, truth is just another cage. Anna leaned in, her gaze locked on the lens. I'm Anna Volkov. I was employed by the National Security Agency. A wave of nausea crested, a familiar tide. The NSA. Merely voicing the acronym conjured the crushing weight of complicity, of shattered trust. Flashback. The humming, almost sentient, fluorescent lights of NSA headquarters, a sterile chorus to the birth of a monster. Anna, newly graduated from MIT, idealism burning bright, stood beside Dr. Albright, a man whose intellect was only eclipsed by his chilling detachment. They occupied a secure server vault, the atmosphere thick with the thrum of processing power. Project Nightingale, Albright announced, his tone flat, as rivers of code coursed down the screens. A predictive policing algorithm. We ingest everything, social media feeds, financial footprints, travel dossiers, to pinpoint potential threats before they solidify. Anna's brow furrowed. But, that's a wholesale invasion of privacy. What about fundamental rights? Albright's chuckle was brittle and devoid of warmth. Fundamental rights? Anna, we're at war. A war against terror. Inevitably, there will be losses. We're simply striving to minimize them. Consider it proactive healthcare. For months, Anna became enmeshed in Nightingale's intricate architecture. She perceived its promise, its ability to sift through digital mountains, extracting vital details. Yet, she also witnessed its failings, its inherent prejudices, how it disproportionately targeted marginalized communities. One night, she stumbled upon a red flag designation for a young Muslim student based solely on anti-war sentiments expressed on Facebook. Her concerns were dismissed by Albright. Collateral effects, he stated. Regrettable, but acceptable. That moment acted as a hinge. Her initial idealism withered, supplanted by a persistent unease. Attempts to voice her concerns to superiors were met with polite dismissal or veiled intimidation. She was trapped in a velvet-lined cell. A year later, she resigned, offering personal reasons as the pretext. But the reality was that she could no longer stomach the deceit. The shadow of Nightingale clung to her, a constant companion. Nightingale is more than just counter-terrorism, Anna continued, her voice gaining resolution. It's about command. Utter, absolute command. She detailed the project's core mechanisms, its collection and analysis of citizen data, the construction of digital profiles used to predict behavior, identify dissent, and squash resistance. They insist it's for our protection, she added, bitterness coating her tone. But who gets to define protection? Who decides what constitutes a threat? And what happens when the algorithm falters? When innocents are ensnared in the web? She paused, inhaling deeply. The viewer count had edged up to 13. A small victory, but one nonetheless. I glimpsed Nightingale's true potential, she declared. I saw how it could be perverted to silence opposition, manipulate perception, to obliterate anyone daring to defy the status quo. Remaining silent was no longer an option. The rain intensified, pounding against the pane like a frantic alarm. She knew they were observing, eavesdropping. They always were. But she had ventured too far to retreat now. They demanded I erase the memory of what I'd witnessed, she said, her voice ringing with conviction. They insisted I move on. But I refuse. I cannot. The world deserves to know about Project Nightingale. The world deserves the truth. She displayed a partially obscured document, a fragment of evidence, outlining the project's financial backing and reach. A deliberate gamble, a trail of breadcrumbs for those willing to pursue it. Abruptly, the laptop display convulsed, a brief but unsettling break. The webcam light extinguished. Anna's heart hammered against her ribs. She frantically checked connections, her hands trembling. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Can anyone hear me?" Silence answered. Then, a line of text materialized on the screen. "We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty." Her blood froze in its tracks. A kill switch. A prearranged code. She wrenched the Ethernet cable from its socket, severing the internet connection. Too late. She scrambled to her feet, adrenaline coursing through her. Escape was paramount. As she reached for the handle, a shadow elongated across the room. A figure loomed in the doorway, a menacing silhouette. Anna Volkov, a voice intoned, devoid of warmth. "We require a conversation." The rain persisted, washing away all remaining vestiges of hope. The digital phantoms had finally cornered their prey. The Atlantic Divide. The image swam into focus on the jury-rigged screen, a news report, months past, yet burned raw into Anna's mind. Twisted metal wreckage splayed across a Moroccan field. The caption screamed, "Saudi prince perishes in air disaster." Pilot error, the official verdict. A lie, Anna knew. Rain hammered the factory's boarded windows. Each impact resonated with the frantic drumbeat within her. They hunted her. She felt it in her bones. But the truth craved sunlight. "Project Nightingale," she announced, her voice strained, amplified by the pathetic mic. It wasn't about anticipating crime. It was about stifling opposition. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, conjuring NSA files. Gutted by redactions, yet the essence remained. Intercepted exchanges. Monitored funds. Tracked itineraries. All converging on one name, Prince Khaled bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. Khaled wasn't merely a royal figure, Anna pressed, he was a vehement critic of the Saudi government. He championed democratic ideals, human rights. He possessed sway, especially among the kingdom's youth. That made him a target. A pixelated image bloomed, Prince Khaled, vibrant with conviction, addressing a throng. His fervor seemed to jump from the screen. Nightingale flagged him months prior to the crash, Anna stated, her fingers a blur on the keys. The algorithm deemed him a high-risk destabilizing influence, due to his activism and online presence. It forecast an escalation of his dissent, potentially sparking upheaval. A cascade of intercepted messages appeared. Encrypted, but NSA had cracked the code. Dialogues with activists, academics, journalists. Discussions of funding pro-democracy initiatives. Condemnation of the Crown Prince's governance. These transcripts, Anna highlighted, emphasizing key phrases, were used to build a case, to depict him as a dangerous radical. But notice the timestamps. They precede any official inquiry into the aviation incident. A map materialized, charting the prince's flight from Paris to Rabat. An ominous crimson pulse marked the location of the downed aircraft. The plane's flight recorder was recovered, allegedly, Anna said, a tinge of scorn in her tone. But the data was suppressed. The investigation concluded swiftly, discreetly. How very convenient. She accessed a different document, a confidential NSA briefing, stamped top secret/SI/TK/Noforn. Its title, Project Nightingale, Target Prioritization. This briefing, Anna explained, her voice betraying a slight tremor, details the parameters for selecting targets. It encompasses criteria like, potential for societal disruption, ideological conflict with U.S. interests, and access to resources capable of shaping public discourse. Prince Khaled ticked every box. A sharp crack echoed from below. Anna recoiled, her gaze snapping downward. They were closing in. Time is short, she imparted, urgency tightening her throat. But you must grasp this. Project Nightingale isn't simply about crime prevention. It's about neutralizing threats. And sometimes those threats are just voices of disagreement. One final piece of evidence emerged, a heavily censored email exchange between NSA operatives. One phrase, barely visible through the black ink, leaped out, asset designation confirmed. Mitigation protocols in effect. Asset designation, Anna murmured, is NSA code for someone marked for elimination. Mitigation protocols. That could encompass anything. Disinformation campaigns. Sabotage. Or something infinitely darker. The floorboards groaned outside the room. They were on her level. They exploited Project Nightingale, Anna whispered, her voice almost drowned by the downpour, to justify the prince's demise. They extinguished a dissenting voice, cloaked in the banner of national security. She peered directly into the lens, her eyes pleading. This is the potential of Project Nightingale. This is their current practice. And if we do not stop them, who will be next? The door fractured. Light blazed into the room. Anna's transmission dissolved into static. Whispers of kinetic action. The screen blazed, a sterile rectangle of redacted secrets and unsettlingly precise bureaucratic jargon. Subject, kinetic action, preliminary assessment. The clinical phrase struck her like a fist. Kinetic action. A bloodless term for assassination. Anna magnified the text, fighting the pixelation. The timestamp preceded Prince Faisal's accident by half a year. Her hand, still shaky from the broadcast, raked through her disheveled hair. Had she just signed her own execution order? The incriminating file, delivered via an anonymous dead drop, a USB drive hidden inside a book at the Zurich station, felt impossibly heavy. She'd risked everything airing it without verification, but the file names, the NSA designations, they resonated with a terrifying authenticity. She pinged Wraith, the cybersecurity ace she'd found through the activist grapevine. Wraith, need your eyes on something ASAP. Urgent. A pause. Send it. You know the drill, Volkov. As the file uploaded, Anna frantically scanned the document again, seeking a loophole, a shred of plausible deniability. The prose was detached, almost surgical. Risk calculations, probabilistic forecasts, collateral damage. Faisal was coldly labeled Target Alpha. Nausea roiled within her as a past scene clawed its way back, a windowless room at NSA headquarters, a soulless analyst detailing a similar assessment for a high-value individual, a Belarusian lawyer. Even then, a seed of unease had sprouted, one she'd desperately tried to bury. The good of the many, she'd rationalized. National security trumps all. But the faces of the condemned had lingered. Volkov, Wraith's reply blinked onto the screen. Metadata's been wiped clean. Professional job. This wasn't some grunt slip-up. Source verification possible. Worth a shot. Give me a few hours. But honestly, it screams genuine NSA. The language, the formatting, someone knew the playbook. A glacial dread settled deep in Anna's gut. This wasn't mere silencing, Project Nightingale was actively snuffing out lives. And she'd just shone a floodlight on their operation. Another memory surfaced, a bleary-eyed debate with David, her former lover and colleague. Surrounded by empty takeout containers and stacks of classified intel, they'd clashed over Nightingale's ethics. He saw it as a regrettable necessity, a shield for U.S. interests. She argued it was a descent into tyranny, an affront to basic rights. The argument ended in brittle silence, a canyon forming between them that they never bridged. Where was David now? Had he been a participant? Had he known? She banished the paralyzing doubt. Survival demanded focus. The wail of approaching sirens sliced through the night, drawing closer. They were coming. Wraith, gotta move, she hammered out. Anything you find, funnel it to the consortium. You know the channels. Volkov, tread carefully. You've kicked a sleeping giant. Understood. She snapped the laptop shut, clutching the encrypted drive in her pocket. Evasion time. Her gaze darted around the derelict warehouse, her senses heightened. Every shadow concealed a potential enemy, every groan of the roof a stark warning. Escape was paramount. She needed tangible evidence. She needed to reveal this truth, whatever the consequences. Prince Faisal's warm smile, a ghost of justice, flickered in her mind. Inhaling sharply, she melted into the darkness, the chilling echo of kinetic action pursuing her. The ghost of Southeast Asia. The name swam in the digital ether of her encrypted workstation, Mark Jennings. Ex-CIA, Black Ops Specialist. Volkov leaned back, the cheap plastic of the motel chair creaking under her weight. Prince Faisal. Jennings. The connection, if it held, was a smoking gun. Anything solid? Marco's voice crackled over the secure comms. He was holed up in a safe house in Prague, sifting through data dumps, a digital bloodhound on the scent. Possible triggerman, Volkov replied, her fingers already dancing across the keyboard, pulling up Jennings' fragmented history. Gulf War. Balkans. Deniable operations in South America. The usual resume for a ghost. Ghosts leave trails, Lena, their tech expert, chimed in from Berlin. Even if they're digital shadows. The trail led, predictably, to Southeast Asia. Manila, Bangkok, Phnom Penh. A string of shell corporations, numbered bank accounts, and whispers in the underbelly of expat communities. Jennings had seemingly vanished into the humid sprawl of the region years ago. Retirement? Unlikely. More likely, a deep cover assignment gone sour, or a burn notice he'd ignored. Volkov zoomed in on a grainy photograph, lifted from a compromised Interpol file. Jennings, younger, harder, his eyes holding a spark of something that was now undoubtedly extinguished. The photo was dated 10 years ago, taken in a bar in Patpong, Bangkok. A woman clung to his arm, her face blurred, her laughter echoing silently across the years. He's been off the grid for a while, Volkov said, more to herself than the others. But he's not invisible. Just buried. The next 48 hours were a blur of coded messages, discrete payments, and whispered conversations. Volkov and her team leveraged their network, a web of disillusioned intelligence officers, hackers, and fixers who believed in the power of information. They offered Jennings as bait, a name whispered in the right ears, a promise of anonymity and a hefty payout for information. A contact in Phnom Penh, a former journalist with a penchant for strong whiskey and weaker allegiances, came through. Jennings was alive. Living under an assumed name in a remote village in Cambodia, near the border with Thailand. He was running a small fishing operation, a world away from the shadows he once inhabited. He's a broken man, the journalist slurred over the encrypted line. Haunted. Doesn't talk much. Drinks a lot. Get me a meeting, Volkov said, her voice tight. The meeting was arranged through a series of intermediaries, each transaction adding another layer of deniability. A fishing boat. A deserted beach. A code phrase whispered under the cover of the jungle night. Volkov spent the hours preparing, not for a confrontation, but for a conversation. She knew Jennings wouldn't willingly betray his former masters. But everyone had a breaking point. Everyone had a price. Her price was the truth. She traded her city clothes for practical khakis and a worn canvas jacket, the humid air already clinging to her skin. She checked her Sig Sauer, the cold steel of familiar comfort. This wasn't about violence, it was about leverage. As she stepped onto the creaking fishing boat, the Cambodian sun beating down on her face, she felt a wave of apprehension. She was walking into the lion's den, into the heart of darkness. But she had no choice. The world deserved to know the truth about Project Nightingale. And Mark Jennings held the key. The boat's engine sputtered to life, the growl echoing across the still water. The ghost of Southeast Asia was waiting. Confessions in the shadows. The air pressed down like a sodden blanket as Volkov entered the shack, a place where hope seemed to rot alongside the timbers. A solitary bulb buzzed, etching the room in harsh contrasts. Jennings, a figure etched with regret and dissipation, was slumped at a shaky table, oblivious to her arrival. The stench of old beer mingled with a briny odor, assaulting her senses. "Mr. Jennings?" Her voice sliced through the close stillness. He lifted his gaze at last, his eyes, once, she guessed, sharp and predatory, now glazed with a listless quality. "Who wants to know?" The question was muffled, the accent unmistakably American, but eroded by time and hardship. "Anna Volkov. We need to discuss Prince Faisal." The effect was electric. His frame snapped rigid, a faint tremor rippling through him. The vacant expression fled, replaced by a spark of raw panic. He scrambled to his feet, sending a half-empty bottle crashing to the floor. "I don't know what you're talking about. You've got the wrong man." Volkov advanced, her stare unwavering, a steel edge in her demeanor. "Spare me the pretense, Mr. Jennings. Or should I call you Mark? We know who you were, and what services you offered." He recoiled, holding up his hands in a futile gesture of defense. "I'm just a fisherman. Trying to eke out a living. Leave me be." A fisherman formerly employed by the CIA? A fisherman with a particular expertise in subtly lethal substances? Volkov countered, each word a precise cut. "The Prince's aircraft. Nightingale. The threads converge, Mr. Jennings. And they lead to you." He shook his head, wild-eyed, scanning the confines of the hovel as though seeking a sudden escape route. "Lies. All fabrication. I wasn't even stateside then. Satellite surveillance places you in Riyadh weeks prior to the incident. Banking records indicate a significant deposit into an offshore account soon after." Volkov let the pronouncements land. "You deployed the virus, Jennings. The one meticulously engineered to mimic a sudden heart attack. Seamless, efficient, undetectable, almost." He collapsed back into the chair, his resistance crumbling like dry soil. The bluster had dissipated, leaving a shattered husk of a man haunted by dread. "I know nothing about a virus. Don't prolong this needlessly." Volkov's voice softened, shifting to a more coaxing tone. "Nightingale is spiraling. Devastating lives, destabilizing nations. Prince Faisal was simply the initial casualty. You have a chance to salvage something, to help halt the carnage." Silence seeped back in, saturated with unspoken charges and buried remorse. Jennings fixed his gaze on his clenched fists, his knuckles stark white against the grime. Finally, a whisper escaped his lips. "It was an order." Volkov leaned in, lowering her voice. "Whose order?" He hesitated, his eyes conveying a desperate plea for understanding. I can't say it. You must. This transcends you now. It's about averting a global tragedy." Volkov's intense gaze bored into him. "Who gave the order, Jennings?" He squeezed his eyes shut, a solitary tear carving a path through the creases of his weathered face. "It was Bradford. Undersecretary Bradford." The name resonated in the air, weighty with significance. Bradford. A prominent figure in the intelligence apparatus, a man woven into the fabric of power. "Recount everything," Volkov demanded, urgency lacing her tone. "Everything about the operation. Everything about Bradford's involvement." Jennings inhaled raggedly, his voice barely registering above a breath. I was approached, recruited, for a special project. Bradford portrayed it as crucial to national security. He depicted the prince as a menace, a destabilizing influence in the region. He said, he had to be eliminated. And the virus? I engineered it. Modified a pre-existing strain for absolute stealth. It induced cardiac arrest, indistinguishable from natural causes. I delivered it. I introduced it onto the prince's jet during a routine maintenance check. Volkov absorbed every detail, her mind dissecting the information. Were you aware of Nightingale? Jennings shook his head. Not by that designation. I was led to believe it was a focused assassination initiative. Vital to safeguarding American interests. And you accepted that justification? He looked up, a spark of defiance flickering in his eyes. I had no choice. Bradford possessed leverage. Shadows from my past. Things I believed were long buried. What sort of leverage? Volkov pressed the point. It's irrelevant, Jennings murmured, shaking his head, it's finished. It's done. It is far from finished, Jennings. This is merely the opening chapter. Volkov straightened, her gaze hardening. You've made your confession. Now, you will assist me in unearthing the truth. Oiled chains. The stilt house air, thick with the saccharine fumes of incense, clashed jarringly with the sterile reality of the encrypted data on Anna's laptop. Jennings, a shadow of his former self, his vitality leached away, listlessly mended a fishing net. He resembled less a hardened operative and more a faded effigy lost in the sweltering Cambodian heat. Bradford's payment, Anna stated, her tone devoid of inflection, was more than just a bribe. It was seed money. She projected a web of financial transactions onto a makeshift screen, a white bedsheet nailed to the bamboo. The numbers danced in the gloom, outlining a labyrinthine route through obscure holding companies registered in tax havens. Jennings remained impassive. I've told you all I know. You told me what you thought would satisfy me, Anna countered, tapping the makeshift screen. Follow the breadcrumbs, Mark. Isn't that the mantra? This leads to something far greater than a prince's assassination. The transactions converged on a corporate titan, Petroglobal. Anna had already devoted hours to dissecting their filings, leaked board minutes from a previous breach, conveniently unpatched, and lobbying records. Prince Faisal's name surfaced repeatedly, usually in the context of a proposed alternative oil conduit across Yemen. He was poised to upset the Southern Route pipeline deal, Anna observed, almost to herself. Jennings finally glanced up, a spark of comprehension, or perhaps apprehension, in his gaze. The pipeline. Bradford had a stake in that. Intimately so, Anna confirmed. Petroglobal stood to reap billions. The prince championed a divergent course, one circumventing Petroglobal's interests, one favoring Yemeni communities over Western shareholders. She displayed a map, delineating the proposed routes. The southern route, Petroglobal's project, snaked through volatile territory, demanding exorbitant security expenses and enriching local warlords. The prince's alternative was shorter, safer, and considerably less costly. He imperiled their profits, Anna continued, her voice taking on an edge. More than that, he jeopardized their dominion. He leveraged his influence, his family's prestige, to champion the alternative. He generated unwanted scrutiny. He was an impediment that needed removal. The pieces interlocked, each connection resounding with the chilling resonance of corporate avarice and political machinations. Prince Faisal wasn't merely collateral damage from Project Nightingale, he was a casualty of a well-oiled juggernaut, powered by capital and sway, relentlessly pursuing its objectives. Bradford, Jennings murmured, shaking his head slowly. He was always preaching about the greater good, about safeguarding American priorities. He never alluded to this. The greater good is whatever legitimizes the subsequent billion-dollar coup, Anna retorted, her voice dripping with disillusionment. And American priorities? Those are generally indistinguishable from Petroglobal's. Abruptly, a burst of static shattered the taut atmosphere. Anna's encrypted channel, typically impregnable, fractured. A warning flashed, compromised. "They've located us," Anna snapped, her voice sharp. She slammed the laptop shut, terminating the connection. "Prepare to move." With surprising alacrity, Jennings responded, his actions belying his age and apparent lethargy. He seized a worn rucksack and a corroded machete. "Where to flee?" "Deeper," Anna responded, her eyes sweeping the jungle surrounding the stilt house. "We need to vanish." The burning incense suddenly felt stifling, the sweet aroma turning bitter on her palate. The gleaming cogs of power had tightened, and they were ensnared in their pitiless grasp. The Istanbul disappearance. The headline on the laptop blazed, "Journalist Isabella Rossi vanishes in Istanbul." Anna's gaze snagged on the pixelated photo from Rossi's website, her vibrant smile now a haunting reminder. Less than 2 days had passed since their narrow escape from the compromised safe house, and now this. "Damn," Jennings grumbled, peering over her shoulder. He raked a hand through his receding hairline, worry lines deepening like trenches on his weathered face. She was onto something. Perhaps too much. Anna clicked the link, a Turkish news outlet rendered into stilted English. Rossi had been in Istanbul, probing anomalies in the official Prince Faisal plane crash report. She was last seen leaving her hotel near Taksim Square, supposedly en route to a clandestine meeting. Her room remained untouched, personal effects undisturbed. No forced entry, no farewell. Just, absence. "Let's dissect her findings," Anna murmured, minimizing the news window and accessing the encrypted drive mirroring Rossi's cloud storage. The journalist was meticulous, a trait now invaluable. Files were logically arranged, meticulously dated and cross-referenced. Anna navigated to Southern Route Pipeline, initial observations. The contents comprised public documents, surreptitious memos, and Rossi's private annotations. Petroglobal's relentless lobbying efforts in Azerbaijan and Georgia were meticulously chronicled, as were the study's warning of the pipeline's potential to destabilize the region, further tilting it towards Russian influence. Anna parsed financial statements, flagging dubious transactions routed through shell companies domiciled in the British Virgin Islands. Then she unearthed it, a partially censored email exchange. Rossi corresponded with an individual using the handle Nightingale Watcher. The provided address was a secure drop, routed through servers in Panama and Iceland to mask their source. "Who's Nightingale Watcher?" Jennings inquired, squinting at the screen. Anna magnified the email headers, a sudden tension causing her muscles to constrict. "MI6, she stated, her voice barely above a whisper. "The source has ties to British intelligence." The final email from Rossi to Nightingale Watcher was time-stamped 3 days prior to her disappearance. The subject line, confirming asset, Kingfisher. Its terse body read, "Kingfisher's song has changed. Believes accident orchestrated. Petroglobal implicated. Evidence suggests deliberate act. Immediate verification paramount." "Sabotage," Jennings echoed, brow knitted in concern. Rossi believed the crash wasn't accidental. And she possessed corroboration. Anna leaned back, the weight of the implications pressing on her. Rossi had stumbled upon something immense, information powerful players sought to suppress. Petroglobal, MI6, a vanished journalist. The pieces clicked into place, forming a terrifying tableau. "We have to locate Nightingale Watcher," Anna declared, her eyes locked on the screen. They alone possess what Rossi discovered. The encrypted phone vibrated insistently on the table. Anna grabbed it, noting the secure messaging notification. It was Omar. "We have a complication," the message flashed. "They are aware of Istanbul. You are under surveillance." A shiver danced down Anna's spine. The net was tightening, once more. "We're compromised," she told Jennings, already gathering their few possessions. "Now." The safe house, a stifling apartment above a bustling falafel vendor in a derelict sector, felt less like sanctuary and more like a trap. Every shadow seemed to conceal a menace, each passing vehicle a possible threat. Anna furtively peered out the window, scrutinizing the street. The faces were unfamiliar, yet the acute sense of being watched was undeniable. "Where to next?" Jennings queried, a tremor present in his voice. "I have a connection in Athens," Anna responded, accessing a map on her laptop. "A past associate from my previous life. She can provide us with anonymity." "Athens is a considerable distance," Jennings remarked, his skepticism evident. "It's our only viable course of action," Anna insisted, her tone resolute. "We have to reach Nightingale Watcher before they do. Survival is paramount." As they readied themselves for departure, the image of Isabella Rossi's face burned in Anna's mind. A reporter who dared to delve too deeply, who brushed too close to uncomfortable truths. Anna pledged to uncover the truth behind her fate, to expose the forces that silenced her. It was the least she could offer. Berlin betrayal. The safe house reeked of stale coffee and desperation. A map of Berlin, crisscrossed with hastily drawn lines, dominated the table. "He's holed up near Museum Island," Jennings said, his voice raspy. "Old East Berlin. Lots of tourists, lots of shadows. Ideal for a ghost." Anna ran a hand through her already disheveled hair. "Nightingale Watcher has been silent for too long. Rossi's disappearance, it's connected. We need to get him out, debrief him, and find out what he knows about Petroglobal and MI6. Extraction won't be clean," Jennings warned, tapping a point on the map with his calloused finger. "Lots of eyes. BND, maybe even SVR. They'll be watching for anyone sniffing around a compromised asset. We don't have a choice. Rossi was getting too close. They silenced her. Nightingale Watcher is next." Anna's voice was flat, devoid of emotion, but her eyes burned with a fierce resolve. The plan was simple, brutal in its simplicity. A two-man team would create a diversion near the Pergamon Museum, drawing attention away from the back alley where Nightingale Watcher would be waiting. Anna and Jennings would grab him, get him into a prearranged vehicle, and disappear into the labyrinthine streets of Berlin. The adrenaline hit Anna like a shot of pure electricity as they approached the rendezvous point. The air was thick with the smells of currywurst and exhaust fumes. Jennings, his face grim, checked his weapon one last time. The diversion worked. A staged argument escalated into a shoving match, quickly attracting a crowd. Anna and Jennings moved swiftly down the alley, their senses on high alert. Nightingale Watcher was there, huddled in the shadows, his face pale and drawn. He was older than Anna expected, his eyes filled with a haunted weariness. "Get me out of here," he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. That's when the world exploded. A volley of gunfire ripped through the alley, shattering the fragile illusion of calm. Bullets ricocheted off the brick walls, spitting concrete dust into the air. Anna shoved Nightingale Watcher behind a stack of overflowing bins, her heart pounding in her chest. "Ambush!" Jennings yelled, returning fire with deadly accuracy. He moved with a practiced efficiency, his movements honed by years of experience in the shadows. Anna peeked around the corner, trying to assess the situation. There were at least 3 of them, heavily armed and wearing black tactical gear. They moved with a coordinated precision that suggested professional training. Not BND, something else. Something darker. "They knew we were coming," she shouted above the din of gunfire. "Someone tipped them off." The firefight was brutal, a chaotic dance of death in the narrow alleyway. Jennings took a bullet to the shoulder, but he barely flinched, continuing to lay down suppressing fire. Anna, her hands steady, returned fire, taking down one of the attackers with a precise headshot. But they were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped. "We need to move." Jennings yelled, his face contorted in pain. "They're flanking us." Anna grabbed Nightingale Watcher, pulling him to his feet. He was shaking, paralyzed with fear. "Move," she screamed, shoving him forward. "Now." They scrambled through a narrow gap in the fence, emerging onto a busy street. The attackers were right behind them, their faces grim and determined. A black sedan screeched to a halt beside them. "Get in!" Jennings yelled, shoving them into the back seat. The driver, a burly man with a shaved head, slammed the accelerator, sending the car careening through the streets of Berlin. The attackers gave chase, their car weaving in and out of traffic. Anna watched them recede in the rearview mirror, her mind racing. Someone had betrayed them. Someone within her organization, someone she trusted, had leaked their plans to the enemy. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. The carefully constructed network she had built, the people she had relied on, were compromised. "Where are we going?" Nightingale Watcher asked, his voice trembling. Anna didn't answer. Her mind was already focused on the next move, on finding the traitor, on uncovering the truth behind Rossi's disappearance and the Prince Faisal assassination. But as she looked at Jennings, bleeding in the seat beside her, she knew one thing for sure: this was no longer just about exposing Project Nightingale. It was about survival. And it was about revenge. The hunt for Nightingale Watcher had just turned into a hunt for a mole. The game had changed. The senator's shadow. The digital breadcrumbs led to Switzerland, as they often did. Nightingale Watcher, secured in a safe house a world away, had coughed up the account number, a string of digits etched in his memory from his time scrubbing the project's finances. Jennings, hunched over his laptop in the cramped Berlin safe house, worked his magic, bypassing firewalls and navigating the labyrinthine world of international banking regulations. The monitor glowed, reflecting in his tired eyes. Got it. Union Bancaire Privée. Anonymous, naturally. Anna paced, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins from the previous night's escape. The bullet wound in her arm throbbed, a constant reminder of the mole and the escalating danger. And the beneficiary? Jennings typed a few more commands. That's where it gets interesting. Shell Corporation, registered in the Caymans. Standard procedure. But the ultimate beneficial owner, it's a trust. The Liberty and Progress Trust. He paused, a grim smile twisting his lips. Subtle. Who controls the trust? Anna asked, her voice tight. That's the million-dollar question. But I can tell you who's been making significant deposits into it. Petroglobal. And withdrawing equally significant amounts. He brought up a series of transaction logs, dates and figures blurring together. The pattern is consistent. Money flows in from Petroglobal, then gets siphoned out in smaller chunks to various lobbying groups and individual accounts. Anna leaned closer, her gaze fixed on the screen. Show me the individual accounts. It took another hour, but Jennings, fueled by caffeine and righteous anger, eventually cracked it. One of the accounts stood out, receiving disproportionately large sums. The name attached was a shock, even to Anna. Senator Harrison Sinclair, she breathed, the name a venomous whisper. Sinclair, the senior senator from Virginia, a champion of defense spending, a staunch advocate for American interests abroad, and a vocal supporter of Project Nightingale. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Anna, ignoring the pain in her arm, pored over Sinclair's voting record, his public statements, his financial disclosures. Jennings dug deeper into the Liberty and Progress Trust, uncovering a network of offshore companies and nominee directors. The evidence mounted, a damning indictment of the senator's corruption. They found records of Sinclair pushing for legislation that directly benefited Petroglobal, championing the pipeline deal that had cost Prince Faisal his life. They discovered campaign donations from the company funneled through the trust, disguised as grassroots support. The picture was complete. Sinclair was a puppet, bought and paid for by Petroglobal. We have enough, Jennings said, finally, his voice hoarse. Enough to destroy him. Anna shook her head. Destroying him isn't enough. We need to expose the entire network, the people who orchestrated this. Sinclair is just a piece of the puzzle. She knew confronting him was a risk, a reckless gamble. But she also knew it was necessary. She needed to see the man, to understand the depths of his betrayal. Using a burner phone and a series of encrypted messages, Anna arranged a meeting. A discreet location, a private room in a small, unassuming restaurant in Washington, D.C. She arrived alone, leaving Jennings to monitor from a distance. Sinclair was already there, sitting at a corner table, his face etched with concern. He rose as she approached, extending a hand. Anna, what is the meaning of this? I received a disturbing message. Anna ignored his hand, her eyes cold and hard. I know about Project Nightingale, Senator. I know about Petroglobal, the pipeline deal, and the Liberty and Progress Trust. His face paled. He tried to maintain his composure, but a flicker of fear betrayed him. I don't know what you're talking about. Anna placed a file on the table, thick with documents, transaction logs, and photographs. Don't insult my intelligence, Senator. I have proof. Enough to send you to prison for the rest of your life. He glanced at the file, his eyes darting around the room. This is slander. Fabricated evidence. Is it? Then explain the millions of dollars flowing from Petroglobal into your personal accounts. Explain your unwavering support for their agenda, despite the obvious ethical conflicts. Sinclair stood up, his voice rising. I have no idea where you got this information, but it's completely false. I'm a patriot, Anna. I've dedicated my life to serving this country. By selling it out to the highest bidder. Anna retorted, her voice dangerously low. By signing off on a project that led to the deaths of countless innocent people. By helping Petroglobal steal a country's resources and silence anyone who opposed them. He stepped closer, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. You don't understand, Anna. This is bigger than you, bigger than both of us. There are powerful forces at play here. You're playing a dangerous game. I know exactly what game I'm playing, Senator, Anna said, her voice unwavering. And I'm not afraid to expose you, and everyone else involved. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. One more thing, Senator. Prince Faisal. Did Petroglobal order his assassination? Sinclair remained silent, his face a mask of guilt and fear. In that silence, Anna found her answer. The hunt was far from over. The data dump. Anna Volkov's gaze was fixed on the cascade of code illuminating her laptop screen, each glyph a harbinger of truths about to be unleashed. The cabin air bit at her skin, the generator outside coughed out its metronomic rhythm, a stark counterpoint to the vast Alaskan silence. In the adjacent room, Jennings's rumbling snores offered a fragile, if unreliable, sense of security. She'd purged every trace of identifying data, locked the files behind layers of encryption, and bounced the upload through a spiderweb of proxies, each jump designed to frustrate, delay, and, at best, deter pursuit. It was a digital fortress, yet she knew its limitations. They were meticulous, unyielding, armed with resources that dwarfed her own. Her fingertip hovered above the execute command. This was the precipice. Once the data breached its confines, she'd become the hunted, her destiny forever altered. But the spectral faces of the dead, the families shattered by Project Nightingale, the bitter sting of Sinclair's treachery, these propelled her onward. She inhaled deeply, the icy air sharp in her lungs. Faisal's memory surfaced, his bright ideals snuffed out for a pipeline's sake. Then, Ben Carter, the journalist silenced for delving too deep. She owed them this reckoning. The button clicked. The upload bar crept forward, each increment a measure of her shrinking liberty. Transfixed, she watched as meaningless symbols transformed into percentages. 5, 12, 28. Each digit hammered at the vestiges of her former existence. Rising from the wobbly table, her muscles protesting from hours spent in a rigid posture, she drifted towards the window. Outside, the blackness was absolute. Stark against the diamond-scattered sky, the trees stood like mute observers, their branches skeletal arms. A sudden chill, deeper than the room's cold, traced a path down her spine, a primal fear, untethered to the temperature. She glanced at her burner phone. 2 bars flickered. Enough to launch. The email, a concise summation with a link to the data trove, waited, addressed to a carefully vetted list of journalists and watchdogs. Its route was preordained, a labyrinthine path through encrypted servers and anonymous relays, designed to obliterate any trace of origin. 73% complete. Returning to the table, her heart thrummed against her ribs. She brushed her hand over the laptop's cool surface, a sense of surreal calm settling over her. A mere instrument, yet capable of exposing malfeasance, toppling power structures, and igniting a global reckoning. 91%. The email client sprung open, her fingers, betraying her composure, stumbled over the keyboard as she pasted in the prepared text. She scrutinized the recipients one last time, ensuring each address was accurate. Then, hesitation. A wave of sickness threatened to overwhelm her. The moment had arrived. 98%. Eyes closed, she drew in another lungful of air, then tapped send. The message vanished into the digital void, carrying its incendiary content into the world's waiting hands. 100%. Upload finalized. Exhaustion crashed over her in a debilitating wave. She sagged back in her chair, her eyes shut tight. It was done. The challenge had been issued. Now, only waiting remained. A quiet ping from the laptop sliced through the silence. An encrypted message, unexpected, unwarranted. Her eyes snapped open, every sense sharpened. She decoded the message. 2 words stared back at her, they know.